Thanks indeed for joining. I mean, it's a very fortunate state of affairs, I guess, that we're not discussing something really awful that could have happened up in Liverpool. There's still investigations going on. A terrorist investigation is going on. MI5 seem to be now involved. It would appear that whoever did have what we think was a suicide bomb had planned to detonate it in the midst of hundreds of people commemorating Remembrance Day.
Well, it certainly seems that way, and I think it was a lucky escape. And I think that the cab driver in question, I think it seems as though he acted pretty heroically, and his actions saved lives of potentially a large number of people. But it is disturbing, particularly when, as a country, we're all in remembrance for brave service personnel who've given their lives for our country. But it's deeply disturbing that we do have these unhinged individuals who hate our country, hate our values, and it needs to be thoroughly investigated.
It does, doesn't it? And it's very difficult to know, and obviously we can't speak specifically about this case because we don't know the details of it enough. We have seen some arrests in the case as well, 3 other people suggesting there was some kind of a plot being put together. But it's really difficult to know, isn't it? We're always told there's tens of thousands of investigations going on at any one time. I mean, it must be very frustrating and difficult for the security services.
It is. It does seem, though, that often we've seen over the last decade when there is an appalling attack, like driven by a certain ideology, that there tends to be a few at the same time. So, but as I say, it's early to speculate. But I mean, it's disturbing, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, we really do need to. So we will bring you up to date with all of the news that comes from Liverpool as it comes throughout the course of the morning. It looks like we have a very heroic taxi driver to thank for things not going much more badly wrong than they could have done. Tom, let's turn first of all to COP26. Alok Sharma looking a bit emotional. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I saw him interviewed on Andrew Marr yesterday and he said he hadn't had much sleep. But it's sort of coming close to tears because you haven't been able to do something that nobody really thought you could do anyway. Seems to me it was a colossal waste of time and money, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, it seems as though they made some progress, but obviously it seems China and India didn't play ball on
as predicted.
Pretty critical issue. But I mean, look, climate change is a thing. We've got to do what we can to tackle it. But I mean, it does seem to have dragged on a bit. I mean, most conferences only last for a few days. This one seemed to go on.
Well, I mean, everybody went to it and left it after 3 days, and then it carried on for another sort of 10. And you're kind of going, why? What did they do that for?
Well, I mean, I thought it was going to be a bit like Conservative Party conference and would last for about 3 or 4 days. I mean, it just week after week and week it continued.
Yes.
But I mean, let's sort of get back on now talking about, I think, the key issues that my constituents are concerned about.
Yeah, which are they? Because I'm going to ask you about that, because one of the things I saw at the weekend was some observation by a particular, I can't remember which particular pundit made it, but basically saying that before this green agenda came along and before COP26, Boris Johnson was riding pretty high in the polls. Post COP26 and during COP26, suddenly the Labour Party are in the lead. Could the two things be connected?
Look, I mean, other than the cost of living and COVID, things like that, I think the 3 key things we need to focus on are probably law and order, immigration, and also combating the woke agenda. I think those 3 things are the key things I think many of our voters are looking for us to tackle.
Yes, I mean, I think there's no question from the conversations that I have here, the NHS is in dire need of reform and it needs to be fixed. There are so many bits of it that aren't working properly at the moment. Immigration, certainly. I mean, I saw that you tweeted out this morning about the border force because of something that their personnel are complaining about. Apparently the border force say that they don't want to be returning migrants to their place of origin anymore.
They are paid to protect our borders and they're paid to follow the direction of the elected government of this country. If they're not comfortable doing that, they should go and get another job. End of.
I mean, are you comfortable with the way that things are currently being done? You see, again, a lot of people say to me, how many people are going to have to come here before the government stops it? Because surely they must be able to stop it. And if they can't stop it, then when is it going to end?
I'm very concerned about it. I hear about it perhaps more than any other issue at the moment from constituents. Millions of people voted to leave the European Union to take back control of our borders. This doesn't really look like control. We have got the nationality and borders bill going through Parliament, but the sooner we get that implemented, the better. But offshore processing, that. Things only changed in Australia when they did offshore processing. I've seen the graphs, I've seen the data. I think ultimately what we need is a timeline for when we can do that here.
And when they also said to any migrants coming in, if you attempt to arrive in our country illegally, you will never become a citizen, you will never be granted asylum. I think we need to do that as well, don't we?
So they're coming over here from another safe European country. They've knowingly broken the law of the land. In my view, that makes them a criminal and they should be treated as such.
But unfortunately, we have barracks full of human rights lawyers who will say, well, they haven't broken the law, they're perfectly entitled to claim asylum here, and if you do try and deport them, we'll stop you.
Well, I mean, they need to be taken on and challenged. I mean, right now we've got the courts and judicial bill going through Parliament at the moment, which seeks to end the 3 bites of the cherry that they all get before they're deported. We're cutting that. We're dealing with that at the moment because Labour are voting against that.
And that's going to take a while to come into force, though, isn't it? It's
all of
could
this
be
takes
as
a
late
while.
as April.
All of this takes a while to come into force. I've been pretty outspoken on this issue for the last year. I'm deeply troubled by what's happening, but we have got a bill going through Parliament at the moment that will hopefully make a difference. But in my view, it must involve offshore processing because it only changed in Australia when they embraced offshore processing almost overnight.
Right.
The numbers attempting illegal crossings fell off a cliff.
Right. Because what I don't understand and why many people are concerned about this is that, I get letters, I get emails, I get communications all over the country from people who say there's a hotel near me which seems to be full of these people who have been brought in. They're being put up in a hotel, have been there for several weeks or possibly months. Nobody really knows what's going to happen to them. Nobody really knows who they are in a lot of cases, and nobody really understands how long they're going to be here.
You know what I mean? I also want to make a point here. I think there's actually a moral argument for dealing with this problem because we know that for every single economic migrant that comes here illegally and places pressure on the system, it limits our ability to show compassion towards the most genuine refugees. And we've seen that with Afghanistan. So it's absolutely critical we deal with this. I think illegal immigration is one of the top issues in the country right now. Yeah. And it needs to be placed right at the top of the pecking order when it comes to the issues to tackle.
I mean, I saw a report on it the other day in which it said that the large bulk, and by that I mean something like 90% of the people who are coming on these dinghies are from 5 countries. Iran, Syria, I think Iraq was another one, Afghanistan, and I think one of the countries like Libya or Eritrea.
Okay. I don't actually think we can even say with confidence which countries they come from because a lot of them have no papers. They might say they come from a certain country, they might not. Yeah. So
I'm sure there'll be a lot of people saying they come from Afghanistan now in order to get the kind of treatment that Afghan refugees are getting.
Potentially, I think that's very likely.
Yeah. I mean, it is a real problem. What about the state of play with the Green agenda? Because I think a lot of people who have voted Tory in the last election, some of them for the first time, are saying, well, we're not going to do that again because he's trying to make us buy all sorts of heat pumps, make us pay more taxes. The Conservative Party, as it is now, is not the party of low tax and low public spending, is it?
I think most Conservative voters, want us to tackle climate change. They want us to care about the environment, but they don't want that to mean
up to a point.
But they don't want that to mean that we take our eye off the ball with regards to the other key issues that they care about. Yeah. And they're also, of course, concerned about what the agenda may mean for cost of living. So that is a balance that we need to strike.
Right. And people care about climate change when you ask them if they care about climate change. They don't want to appear to be people that don't care about climate change, but it doesn't mean they want you to actually do anything that costs them any money.
I think there's an element of truth in that,
And people can't simply suddenly change over as if they all live in these big houses in Putney to having a heat pump in the house and paying 20,000 quid for something they can't afford, which won't be as good as the thing they've already got.
I think it's a point there, but I do think the environment and climate change is an issue of concern, but I think it's there's loads of other issues of concern.
Well, do you know what's an interesting statistic, and you might want to play this back to anyone who tells you that it's a story that people care about. The BBC and Sky News were covering it as if it was the second coming of Jesus Christ, right? And on the BBC website, every single climate change story that they had was below almost every other story in terms of the numbers of views that it had, in terms of the numbers of people watching it. And yes, there are a section of the population who are fanatical about it, but the large bulk of the population are more worried about their economy, the price of inflation, the cost of living, the price of their energy bills. They're much more concerned about that.
Yeah, I think that's a chief preoccupation for most of my constituents.
Yeah.
But we did have this conference. It was in the diary for a long time.
And now they can have another one next year.
It was going to happen here, and I think that it was right. The PM was prominent in it. But I mean, it's out of the way now.
Right.
Okay.
So let's move on.
Yeah, let's crack on.
Let's forget about it. Let's talk instead about the state of the party itself. You're a newbie into Parliament, if you'll pardon my expression, coming in the 2019 election, along with a lot of other new MPs who we talk to a lot, by the way, here at Talk Radio, because I think you're the future in many ways. Tell me a little bit about how you're being treated, because there was a piece in the Sunday Times at the weekend by Charlotte Ivers in which she kind of painted a picture of cliques and people kind of, not quite, separated by walls, but almost separated by walls. The like of Jacob Rees-Mogg supposedly not being that welcoming to some of the what he might regard as oiki figures who are coming from the red wall seats.
I have to say, I think Jacob Rees-Mogg's always been incredibly polite. So
he's a very polite man.
I don't know where that came from, but I actually think a lot of his views and values are similar to mine and other new intake MPs. But I think we have got a lot of new constituencies represented by MPs who are, some of them are new to the Conservative Party. They're very different types of Conservative, and I think there's been a realignment in British politics. I think we either go along with that, embrace it, and continue to win, or we try and deny reality,
Yeah.
which means that I think we could lose. So, but some of the old guard, I mean, there's certainly a bit of I think a bit of arrogance and complacency there, and a bit of not embracing the facts.
But is there a new Tory kind of spirit, if you like, in terms of it's no longer the older-fashioned kind of Tory from the Shires?
Yeah.
The bloke who's got an office in London, does a bit of work maybe for a law firm, but he's got a rather large estate somewhere out in the middle of Norfolk.
Yeah.
You're instead a younger guy coming in from Ipswich with a very different view of the world.
I mean, I want the Conservative Party to be the party of working class, working people, and I think that a lot of our new MPs come from that background.
It's very Thatcherite thinking, isn't it?
It is, but I think a lot of it, is to do with. But a lot of our new voters who were Labour, they care most about things like immigration, law and order,
right?
And
they voted for Brexit as well.
They did. They voted for Brexit, but also immigration control connected to Brexit,
yes.
and they want to see that delivered.
Yeah.
And I think that is, we've got to go with that realignment. Look at the people voting Conservative. That's what's driving it. It's the people who are deciding to vote Conservative. Right. And I think we've got to continue on that journey. There's been, I think, a pretty deep realignment in British politics. Yeah. And I think it's, I can't see the Labour Party winning back a lot of those voters anytime soon. We've got to deliver. Fundamentally, it lies with us. But, the Labour Party, I think, are a metropolitan, pro-woke, out-of-touch party that have failed in their job to represent the working class. So it's set up to represent the working class. They failed to do that. So, I think the red wall is a long way off crumbling. But as I say, we've got to deliver. We've got to deliver on immigration. We've got to deliver on law and order. And we've got to stand up for our country, its values, and combat the metropolitan woke BS we've seen coming out